You already know this bit, but sometime in the 2020s, two geeks from across social media formed an alliance to bring you geek news from across the Nostalgiaverse. They are Jacob's Toys and SuperSorrell. Together, they have been bringing you the weekly live show, Geek Week in Review, every Sunday. But sometimes, something takes place during the week that requires their full attention. No schedule and no time slot, just an impromptu live stream. Welcome to Geek Week Plus, the bonus show.
Hello. Welcome to Geek Week Plus with me, Jacob's Toys, and of course, wonderful one and only SuperSorrell. This is a very impromptu one. Literally, within the hour, decided that we're going to go live. So, hey, how we doing? Welcome everybody. Annie Roberts, Bethany, I see you guys already in the chat. If you're there, Andrew Orr, hello again. If you're there, join in with the chat. This is going to be a very conversational episode indeed. If you're watching us on catch up, then what do they have to use?
Hashtag catch up crew.
Hashtag catch up crew. Yes, check out the video description as well. It's got all the links to all the various different socials and all the rest of it. But this is Geek Week Plus. This is where we do an episode because something's happened, because something's been announced, because something's been discussed, leaked, etc., etc. And of course, we are talking about the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
That was a surprise. Did not expect that to just drop today out of nowhere.
No, that was just insane.
Yes.
Really, yeah, I'm excited for it. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in that picture that they released. A lot of Easter eggs.
So many Easter eggs. And that's one of the reasons why we were like, you know what, we're going to jump on and we're going to talk about Fantastic Four, because for anyone that hasn't seen it, we'll pop the image up in a second. But basically, Marvel announced very quickly, Happy Valentine's Day, and told us the cast of the Fantastic Four. And that is the image that they released. And yeah, it just seemed like a really random day to share it, like Valentine's Day. Like,
yeah, it was very odd timing. Maybe, I wonder if they were like, they knew of leaks coming, so they just had to put it out.
It's just a very bizarre. I don't see the link. I don't understand where this has come from. I don't understand what the link is to Valentine's Day, or whether they've just used it as a.
I'm not sure if there's an Easter egg on that, because no one on, because I've been searching the internet for hours trying to look into like this kind of stuff, and there's no Valentine's Day Easter eggs that I can see from the Fantastic Four history that would make sense.
No, not at all. Just quickly, a couple of other people in the chat starting to jump in. We got Geek Strong. Geek Strong said, Fantastic Four. What? I haven't seen anything. It literally dropped a couple of hours ago. It just kind of is about what it's half past 10 now.
I can tell you exactly. It dropped 5 hours ago.
5 hours ago. There we go. So I'm going to say I saw it. It must have been at about 6 o'clock that I saw it pop up all over my socials. We've also got Shelley in the chat. She's saying she may nod off though, so we'll try to keep you entertained and with some news and stuff. But yes, the chat is popping off. Just for clarity as well, we go out across a handful of different channels. So if you can hear us talking about comments and stuff and you can't see them, it's because they're commenting on one of the other channels. We'll do our best to throw those comments up as we're discussing them. But yes, so anyway, back to Fantastic Four. This was the image, the official image released by Marvel, MCU, Marvel Studios, all the rest of it, to announce Fantastic Four. And they gave us a release date as well, which is 2025.
Yeah, July 25th, 2025.
July 25th, 2025. Now, there's a lot of 25s in there. I don't know if there's any kind of link to the number 25. I couldn't find anything, but 25th of 25. Yeah. And Valentine's Day. I can't get my head around why Valentine's Day. Like, I mean, obviously they're a family, there's a couple involved in Fantastic Four. Like, that is as bad as much of a link as I could put it. But they announced cast as well, which I thought was really exciting.
Yeah, very weird cast though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an odd group of people that I would not have put in these roles, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think they all fit. That's the funny thing.
I'm not sold on Pedro Pascal yet. I'm not sold on him as Mr. Richards just yet, but we'll see.
You know what? I'm gonna kind of because the internet is a little bit split between him. I mean, he is the man of the moment, isn't he? Like he's in so much, and he's kind of killing it with everything. I mean, Mandalorian being his kind of, dare I say, kind of big breakout.
It is,
Hang on a sec. Breaking news here. Geek Strong. I know why on Valentine's Day. Please enlighten us because I cannot find the link for why it was Valentine's Day. But please do let us know in the chat and we'll discuss it when your comment goes up. But going back to Pedro Pascal, visually, I think looking at him, he could be a Reed Richards. You know, I think that there's no denying he's kind of got the look. He's not quite as chiseled as the comic books kind of depict him, but I think he looks okay as a Reed Richards. I think my biggest problem personally, he's a phenomenal actor. There is no denying that at all. But because he is in everything, I'm a little bit kind of Pedro'd out, should we say?
Pedro'd out. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. All right, breaking news. Geek Strong just said, because I love the Fantastic Four. I thought you had something there, Geek Strong. I thought you were going to share something that we weren't able to crack. But yes. So yeah, Pedro Pascal, Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. We kind of all knew it was coming. There was a lot of internet chat, wasn't there, about him doing that. So that's that. So I really haven't got much to say on that one, unless you have.
Yeah, then we've got Vanessa Kirby from The Crown. She's taking on the role of Susan Storm.
Yep. I mean, beautiful actress, looks the part. She can act. She's kind of proven that in The Crown that she's got the ability.
I mean, she was also in Hobbs and Shaw, so I mean, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, we've all got to jump a shark occasionally. Let's be honest. But yeah, I think the pair of them together, when you see their pictures together, I think they work. I'm not mad about the casting. I'm okay. And then funny enough, they're the two, like Reed and Sue are the two that I'm less bothered about, if that makes sense. I mean, it comes to Fantastic Four, it's kind of like they're the couple, like that's fine, they're cool, like as long as you've got quality actors doing that part, that's fine. But for me, Human Torch and the Thing are the fun elements of the Fantastic Four.
And we're going to be having Joseph Quinn. From Stranger Things fame.
Chrissy, wake up!
These cynical eyes.
You know what? It's one of those castings as well that I think if he hadn't had blown up so much from Stranger Things, a lot of people would be kind of going, well, okay, because he's not. How do I say this in a PC way? He's not as traditionally good looking as some of the other depictions of Johnny Storm, is he? He's a bit average, kind of average Joe looking, but I think, having seen his kind of acting ability and how much of a fan favorite he became, I think he could be a really good Human Torch. Considering they were like talking about people like Zac Efron, I mean, like that's kind of where I'm going with it. Like everyone was like, oh yeah, Zac Efron as Johnny, and then you get Joseph, but yeah,
Zac Efron's far too old at this point.
Oh, I know. He's not. He was never going to be. For me, he wouldn't have done it. But you got to remember as well, like in the original films, it was played by Chris Evans.
Yeah.
Who obviously went on to be Captain America. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me as well, like Johnny in the comics was always quite chiseled, quite athletic looking, like blonde haired, like the pretty boy of the group, wasn't he? Like the kind of ladies' man, a bit chauvinistic, like. And I don't know. I don't know. But one of the theories that I've got plays into why I think he's been cast. But
Oh,
we'll
right.
get
Okay,
on.
that's interesting.
Hmm.
And then the one guy who I don't know anything about, Ibn Moss Baccarat. I've had to look him up to even know who he was. Not gonna
He's
lie.
been in a few things. He has been in a few things. What's the one recently? Bear?
Yeah, he was in The Punisher. No Hard Feelings recently. Yeah, The Bear. He was in that. It was in Andor apparently as well.
Oh,
So someone else of Star Wars fame. But yeah, it's not someone that I was overly familiar with. But yeah, we'll see. I do. To be fair, I do prefer it sometimes when it's people I'm not familiar with, because then I go into it without thinking, like, having any precognitions about the characters.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like going in with Pedro Pascal, I'm instantly going Mandalorian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm going to see the Mandalorian. Yeah, every time he comes on screen, I'm going to be going doo doo. But someone like this, like, I'm not too sure who this guy is, so I'm looking forward to seeing him in a new role. So
I think again as well, playing Ben Grimm, playing the Thing, he's going to be as the stone version of himself for the majority of the film, isn't he? We're not going to see the human. You know, and this is my speculation. We might not see the human version at all. If they go for like an origin story, then obviously we're going to see him in human form. But if they go kind of for more of an established story, we might not see him in human form at all. And I think it depends how they do it. If they do it with like mocap, then obviously it's all about his visual, facial expressions and that kind of stuff. If it's all CGI, then it's about his voice acting. But yeah, I mean,
I've got a feeling they're going to do him a lot like they did Korg. It's going to be 90% CGI.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Korg worked, and if they did that for Thing, it would work, wouldn't it?
Yeah. One thing that I will take from this poster that I think is before we kind of deep dive into it too much,
yeah,
is it looks like the Fantastic Four. That's the thing that I was most excited about. Like the costumes look good. Thing looks like Thing. Yeah, and they've kind of given away there that they've kind of given away that it's how they look.
Mm-hmm.
And surely they're not going to change it too much.
No, definitely not.
So let's dive.
Okay. So obviously from the picture straight away, we know that Herbie's going to be in this.
Yes. And you know what?
Go on.
I didn't notice that to start with.
No, did you not?
I did not pick up that Herbie was there. I was so focused on the costume and the depiction of Thing that I didn't even notice Herbie until I kind of started looking at it deeper.
Yeah, humanoid experimental robot B-type integrated electronics. I had to look that up, but he's definitely going to be in it, and he was a part of the animated series as well back in 1978. So it's, you know, keeping within that sort of time era that they're using Herbie. He does look like an old 1960s inspired robot as well, which I like. So it's keeping with the aesthetic of the 1960s thing.
He reminds me very much of Johnny Five in this, and I know that's more 80s, but he looks like a cross between Johnny Five and the robot from Rocky 3.
Yeah.
You know, hello, Paulie. You know that one. It's like the small brother of that robot.
But you know why he was created, right?
Go on, for audience sake.
So Herbie was created by Mr. Fantastic and Master Zar of the Xandarians, who we have seen the Xandarians, who hope that the robot could aid their search for Galactus, whom they sought to defeat.
Ooh.
So that's a little like thingy-majig. That could be something for the future there.
Okay. So we got ties to Galactus already by having him involved.
Eventually as well, he was like, he went on to do just general serving duties around the Baxter building. And he was also the guardian for young Franklin Richards.
That's where I was going with it. That was my kind of link to it.
Okay. So are you ready for me to go a bit on with it?
Go on, Em.
I've been dying to do this all night. So
one thing I'll say before you go into it
is
the time period, because you said it's like a 60s robot. Now, both of us independently kind of messaged each other and guessed that it was going to be in the 60s kind
And
of
I
era.
didn't see your message before I put mine. I was typing it as you put that photo up, saying like confirming that someone had confirmed it was 1960s because of the. Yeah.
So very quickly, for me, straight away, visually, it looks very stylized like WandaVision. That was kind of my message to you, wasn't it? That it looks very much like if this was announced as an episode of WandaVision, it would fit in. So therefore, it's a timepiece as opposed to based in the modern era.
Okay.
And then a little bit later, I saw that somebody had already deep dived on the magazine that the Thing was reading, and that particular magazine came out in like 1963. So based on the cover, you can work out the date of that magazine. So that's 1963.
So also, the picture in the background of Ben Grimm is the humanoid form. That is the Apollo Skylab spacesuit that was used on the Apollo 11 missions with NASA.
Yep.
Which also dates it around 1967 to 1969 when that suit was used.
Okay, so we are definitely
late 60s era
in the 60s.
Yeah,
it's in the 60s, which is interesting, which is very interesting. Which, again, before we dive into your theory, because I'm really eager to hear this, the other thing that's really given away in this particular picture is the logo. So the logo that they're using now, obviously, we do know that logos change. You know that this might not be the logo they eventually use when it comes to it, but we have already seen a Fantastic Four logo when they announced that Fantastic Four were coming, and it was a very modern looking logo. It was that kind of laser looking four, and they've now got this, whereas this looks a lot more retro. Even the font and everything, even down to the Marvel Studios logo in at the top, is done in that kind of what's it called? The folding. I can't remember what it's called, but done in that style as opposed to the modern looking Marvel Studios. So everything about it screams 60s. So we're pretty set in the idea that it's in the 60s.
Well, also there was a comment from Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness when he first meets Reed Richards. He says, "Fantastic Four, didn't you guys chart in the 60s?"
There you go.
So that's the MCU tie-in right there as well.
There you go.
Are we ready for me to go in a little bit in now?
Go on, Em. I'll try my best to keep quiet while you theorize.
This is again, it's completely out of the. It's just complete speculation, completely out of the whim. This is where I'm hoping they're going with it, if I'm thinking right. So Herbie obviously was. I doubt they want to use that robot as the thing that finds Galactus. So I'm going more with the theory that this is the butler of the Fantastic Four, like in the old comics, and he's going to be the keeper of Franklin Richards.
The fact that he's serving a cup of tea or a cup of coffee.
He's hardly the bad guy that's going to find Galactus.
Yeah.
So. But the problem I'm having is it definitely set in the 60s? Or do they just think it's the 60s? Who was the famous person who looked after Franklin Richards other than Herbie? Agatha Harkness.
Yeah.
Who's got a penchant for making things 1960s inspired, as we know from WandaVision. Maybe Wanda and Vision weren't the first time she's put somebody into that kind of a time lock. Maybe this was her first experience where she kept the Fantastic Four from being discovered and basically keeps them in the little bubble a bit like she did with Wanda. Because maybe it was Agatha all along.
Interesting. You know what?
And they think it's the 60s, but in actual fact, they're just trapped in some little bubble somewhere, and they could then bring in characters like, the what they call from WandaVision, the two, I forgot his name, the FBI agent and stuff like that, Pat Dennings, and they could bring in some of those little side characters to tie it all together to the MCU. Bring in Agatha; she's got a TV series coming out as well, which could also help tie it all together.
Now, the Agatha show is set to air before this film.
Yes.
So if that is possible,
that could be the prequel to this.
It would kind of tie into it.
Shows where she came, like give a bit of an update on where Agatha's been, and then have a lot of flashbacks to her past. But it could end with her like applying to be the nanny, and maybe the final scene is the camera pans to see who she sat opposite, and she's opposite, Pedro Pascal, and we'd love to have you look after our son Reed. Franklin, do you want to come meet your new nanny? It was Agatha all along.
You know what? It's not a bad theory. It's not a bad theory.
Just because why would the Fantastic Four in the 1960s? That would mean they would never interact with any other characters from the MCU.
So here's my theory. Here's my theory. I think that now you've said it, I think that could be the only danger I see with that is that it could potentially put this film in jeopardy because they're trying to replicate the success they had with WandaVision with something as big as a Fantastic Four. But then for all the same reasons that it could be dangerous, yeah, it could work. What's the biggest MCU TV show they've had? WandaVision. So let's replicate that with one of the most popular Marvel families. My theory is a little bit different in the respect that it is based in the 60s.
Okay.
And that's why they haven't interacted with any of the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is kind of pre everything we've had. The thing that I can't get past is if that is the case, then they're never going to have Reed Richards interact with Captain America and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the main players who would have interacted with the Fantastic Four have kind of come and gone already. So we're not necessarily going to have Reed Richards and Captain America working together. We're not going to have, a push. We've got all of these new characters that are now kind of taking up the MCU, but there isn't as much comic book history with the Fantastic Four, and these Fantastic Four are very much in the bubble of the MCU that has gone,
Unless this is a alternative universe and it's not actually set within the MCU that we know, because you got to remember as well, the Battle of New York was the first time Earth saw aliens.
Exactly.
That is established in MCU law. So if they're going to be fighting Galactus or having alien battles on Earth, then this has to be a different timeline, which would then help them cross over into the modern MCU, a bit like what they did with Werewolf by Night, because that was also set in the early 1900s, and he crossed over into the modern world thanks to Man-Thing.
Yeah.
So they could do something similar to that.
So I think with all of the multiverse stuff that's going on and the time jumping, that kind of stuff, I think this is set in the 60s, and it's the way that they are going to be able to establish the Fantastic Four without having to address where were they in the Battle of New York, because obviously they're very New York based. Where were they when it came to Thanos? Where were all of these big questions where the Fantastic Four should have been front and center? By putting them back 30, 40 years, kind of answers that. And then there's not going to be any loopholes as in sort of X, Y, and Z. Or, like you say, these are an alternate universe version, and we're going to see the Fantastic Four. We're going to see the kind of origin stories. We're going to see the kind of historic kind of stuff that we know about the Fantastic Four, which then opens up the opportunity for them to give us a modern Fantastic Four, because you've got to bear in mind there's whole bunches of different suits that they could use. So they could use the blue and white for this kind of 60s retro OG Fantastic Four. And then later down the line in the MCU, we get introduced to a new Fantastic Four, like the 616 Fantastic Four or something like that. And it's a bunch of new actors. Things already they've already got their powers. There's no explanation needed, similar to what they did in Multiverse of Madness. They didn't give any explanation to any of those guys' kind of power or backstory because you knew who they were. So I
have a feeling they're going to handle this the same way they handled Spider-Man, because there's already been 2 established Sony movies. Everyone's already aware who the Fantastic Four are. Because of that, the popularity of the first Sony movie, a lot of kids have already seen it. I don't think they need to go through that whole they went to space and were hit by cosmic rays, and now they've suddenly got powers, and let's work out how they're going to deal with this power. I think it'll jump in at an already established kind of, this is the team, and they'll kind of give you a brief overview, but I don't think it'll be as like in depth. It'll be a bit like what they did in Spider-Man. You want like just kind of like say, you already know the lore. Let's get on with it.
I think though, if they are going to show up in mainline MCU in any way, shape, or form, it's going to tie in with the Kang Dynasty film.
Yeah, my only other thinking is if they are going to go 1960s with it, and say if this movie does work, then when they do the X-Men, they could just do the first X-Men and also set that in the 1960s and use the original team, and then just start an entire new timeline of MCU stuff prior to everything we've had so far, set between the 1960s and 80s. And then it'll be like a fresh start almost. Leave the MCU current timeline alone for a bit and go back in time and have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men in their own little bubbly time bit.
I think you might just hit the nail on the head there, mate.
Because it could then, because obviously as well the X-Men storyline is very much about ethnicity and being different, and the 1960s is a perfect setting for that with Martin Luther King and the movement in America. That could be one hell of a timeline for them to be a part of.
You know what? I think you might have just hit it now on the head, because what's the biggest problem with the MCU at the moment is it's gone stale.
Yeah, so this would freshen it up, wouldn't it?
People are bored of the new characters. They're not as invested in the storylines. And much the same as you've said yourself, once the kind of Thanos thing came to a close, the MCU kind of
closed with it.
Finished. Yeah, because it was the end of a big thing. Whereas if they go back, they've got two huge properties now, like you say, Fantastic Four and X-Men. And if they go back a lifetime and start them, they're essentially doing a branch, aren't they? But it could still be the universe that we know, but just 50 years ago.
Or if they wanted to completely start afresh because people aren't happy with the current MCU offerings, they could end the current timeline with Secret Wars, and then have Fantastic Four and the X-Men just in their own universe without the Avengers currently and everything, and just have X-Men and Fantastic Four being the heroes of that timeline, and just completely ignore everything that's came before it.
Yeah. So you have, oh mate,
because then you'd have the X-Men and then there's the ability, if they wanted to recast Captain America and do it in the 1960s style, and then it would be very much a stylized version of the MCU into the 1960s.
Or even just, if this is the starting off point, say this is the late 60s, so we're talking about late 60s going into early 70s. You've then got the 70s, 80s, 90s before you're into the 2000s. So you're looking at like 30, 40 years. This could be their really subtle and unobvious way of rebooting the MCU. Because if the Fantastic Four start here at, for argument's sake, let's say 1969, they go through, you introduce the X-Men in this timeline. Again, it eliminates any question of, well, where were they at Thanos? Where were they at this? Where were they at that? It allows for them to move forward, and they don't have to do everything in real time. They could kind of every couple of years jump forward 5-10 years, and then they can recast all of these characters that we've had, Captain America, Black Widow, Thor, all these characters where the actors are obviously getting older. It gives us a new Wolverine. It gives us a whole fresh X-Men. We then get a whole bunch of new actors taking up the mantle of these characters that are money at the end of the day. It's the Captain America sells lunchboxes. Like, they need to have those characters in it. So, yeah.
So,
just quickly, Geek Strong said they've already put the X-Men with the Marvels in an alternate universe. They have, but that's that version of the X-Men.
And because of how multiverses work, you don't even need to explain it away. It's another it's another part of the multiverse with another world, with another opportunity. Yeah. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to make sense.
I don't think a CGI'd Kelsey Grammer Beast is what we're going to get for the main X-Men. I think that was same as John John Krasinski playing Reed Richards, I think that was very much just a little bit of fan service. The same as Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine in the upcoming Deadpool film. He's not going to be Wolverine moving forward, but it's playing into that fan service. It's selling tickets because it's what people want to see. I think that them introducing a new X-Men in a older, because even things like what, before we go off, one of the biggest complaints about Wolverine across all the movies for 15 years or whatever it was that they did them was that we never saw him in the yellow spandex.
Yeah.
But the yellow spandex, yellow and blue spandex and the mask didn't work for the movie line that they had built. Now, we've seen Wolverine's suit in Deadpool. It's very modern. It's very MCU-esque. It's as close as we're going to get for, to Wolverine in a yellow and blue suit. But the actual kind of comic book style costumes for the X-Men in that time period would fit in with what we see here. Like, they look like jumpsuits that they're in. They don't look modern. They don't look all fancy, and they look like jumpsuits in this particular picture. So they could do a similar thing with X-Men and literally give us animated X-Men in real life. Those costumes, those comic book true costumes, and build a whole new MCU off the back of it.
Yep. And you know what we're saying about that whole of the Apollo suit was used between a certain time period, and we were looking at kind of like that magazine is from like 1960s and stuff. If they did want to bring Captain America into it, he was thawed out in 1968.
Yeah.
So it's set within that time area quite easily, would slot in.
Yeah.
They could even in this timeline version of Fantastic Four, they could even have S.H.I.E.L.D. has already found Captain America and are working on a way to thaw him out. And you could actually see Captain America on ice for the first time. Like, they could show him in the lab on ice. Mate. You know what I mean? That would be amazing. Like, that would be a cool little Easter eggy bit. That Reed Richards is maybe helping S.H.I.E.L.D. unthaw Captain America.
You think about all of the storylines and the comic arcs and the story arcs and everything that the MCU weren't able to address because they didn't hold all the cards.
Yeah.
They're now holding all the cards and going back and starting at the beginning, starting in the 60s. They might be addressing all of those things. Like we would have, and you could bypass the Thanos story and instead go for like a Galactus story. And even to the extent where, like, look at the see, this is where it makes even more sense. So one of the big films, the big Avengers films coming up, is the Kang Dynasty. And we all know that is on rocky ground at the moment because we haven't got a Kang. Like, at the end of the day, Kang was fired. Kang was canned. But this timeline could be leading to that movie.
Yeah.
And then you get a new Kang, you get a new actor, you get a new perspective. You throw away what didn't work and you blow up what did, and we get the version of Kang that we kind of deserve.
And let's not forget, if we're getting the Fantastic Four, then we are 100% going to get Doctor Doom. Like Stuggy's just said, can't wait to see Doctor Doom. Okay. And if we are talking 1960s, it would make sense for Magneto's timeline. Obviously, he was a child of World War II. He was in the Holocaust. He was a Jew, and that would make him in his early 30s by the time this film is on, which would again all fit together nicely for the timeline.
Yeah, which is what the playing age of kind of Reed and Sue is going to be. They're going to be between their 30s and 40s, aren't they? They're not going to.
In the comic books. In the comic books as well, Reed Richards designed the suit that the X-Men wore because he found a way of making the suit so their powers didn't destroy the suit every time they used the powers. So that's why the X-Men, like Wolverine, didn't end up with holes in his gloves every 10 seconds. Yeah. You know what I mean? That could, again, they could have that little Easter egg and nod to the X-Men are coming by Reed Richards sort of presenting Charles Xavier with the original, with like the X suit that we'll eventually see, like the whole, like the first class suit, that yellow and blue or yellow and black. Yeah, that's sort of like first class suit. He could even be designing that during the movie, and that kind of be the Easter egg at the end that he gives it Charles Xavier.
Yeah, Well, the whole First Class films were based around there, weren't they? Around that time. Just very quickly, Shelley said, "If your theory becomes reality, Ash, we'll have to call you SuperSorrell." Yeah, I think it might be a soft reboot of the MCU. That's what we're seeing here. I like the Agatha theory, but then they're very much tied into what they're doing now. Whereas this could be a very soft reboot of and just testing the waters. Like if this works, they've essentially got every character to play with. Whereas at the moment, like we say, they've written off Captain America, they've written off Thor, they've written off Black Widow, they've written off Hulk, like all those kind of things because they're coming to the end of their story arcs. But if this works and they do a soft reboot and kind of just set it back a few years, you've got the entire Marvel universe to include. Going back to Doom though, Doom is an obvious choice for villain because they go hand in hand. They obviously all got their powers at the same time, like all that kind of stuff. But if they are going down the Spider-Man route and these guys are already established and we're not getting an origin story, do you think we're going to include Doom in this, or do you think it will be like a little after credits thing?
Well, didn't he get his powers at the same time as them? Wasn't he with them?
Yeah.
Just the movie. I can't remember that. I've been so long since I've read the Fantastic Four comics.
It's all tied in. They're all Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four go hand in hand. But what I'm saying is, where you said that they might have it already established, like they did with Spider-Man. They wouldn't necessarily have to include Doom until later on. They could try it. There's so many villains and kind of story arcs that revolve around the Fantastic Four. Doom seems like an oversaturated, obvious choice.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it could be something they keep for later on. Yeah. Definitely.
And there is the whole Kang link to Reed and Nathaniel Richards. Obviously Nathaniel Richards being his given name, and is it his father or his grandfather? His father. But he's linked to Reed Richards, and they could soft reboot Kang. And then if they establish a Kang in this timeline, in this kind of, well, it's not a timeline, it'd be the same timeline. So it's the same Earth, but it's just earlier. And if they establish Kang in this, they could easily then kind of bring whoever it is that plays this earlier version of Kang into the modern one for the Kang Dynasty film, if they are keeping that in the current age.
Yep. And just having a quick look at like some of the things, one of the another thing that's set within there, as in that same timeline of when the Fantastic Four was starting off. We were obviously moving towards Vietnam, and the Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos were a thing. Obviously, we know Wolverine, Logan himself, was in Vietnam.
Yep.
There could be some really cool storylines they could get away with it set in the 60s for like across the MCU, like across the Marvel, comic books. There's so many because the golden era. It's the golden era of comics is 1960s. That's where all our favorite stories came from. In some form or another.
That is the thing, is that a lot of them have ties and origins in that time period, or at the time period slightly after. So to go back and put the films there and work their way out makes perfect sense, because like we say, they've then got a plethora of every comic book story arc ever to play around with.
Yep. And then we've got things like stuff that you wouldn't think about, like the Red Menace storyline, which was set during the Cold War. The Strange Tales with Nick Fury. That was the start of S.H.I.E.L.D. basically was in that time era. The Fantastic Four were obviously originally in Strange Tales, and there's loads of stories about the original Human Torch before Johnny Storm got the moniker. It was also set in the 60s. Obviously, that version of Human Torch eventually went on to become Vision, isn't it? Or something to do with Vision?
Oh, I don't know.
There was the Human Torch before Johnny Storm became the Human Torch. There was another Human Torch in the comic books, and that was something to do with Vision, if I remember rightly. And the whole space race thing. we've already seen from this image from Marvel that they're including that because of the thing that Ben Grimm's reading and the fact that they're a part of Apollo 11. So it is set within the golden age of space race, and there could be so much they could do with that.
I think the fact that there are so many space links and
could definitely be a
there
cosmic side of the MCU, couldn't it?
I think we're pointing towards Galactus.
Yeah, 100%. That's where they wanted to go with it all along. The Fantastic Four and Galactus is the way you want to go because you want to see Silver Surfer, the Heralds. That's where their main big stories lie, isn't it?
And I just think that when you think of the MCU, the only villain that's really ever had any kind of clout has been Thanos, because it's the whole world ending, like, you know, all the others, despite how amazing some of them were portrayed, how big their power set is, none of them have had the weight that Thanos has had. So, yeah.
Yeah, and first appearance of Galactus, again, March of 1966.
I mean,
Everything points to the 60s.
Yeah. The thing with Wikipedia is obviously you've got to take stuff for a pinch of salt because everyone can do it themselves.
That's on Marvel's website.
No, that's Wikipedia we're looking at.
Hmm?
You're showing us Wikipedia.
Oh, yes, I am looking at Wikipedia. Oh, yeah, this way I'm here.
But I mean, obviously, you know, things like dates and stuff, not so much. But when it comes to the interesting stuff, yeah. Andrew Orr said, I think the vision being made from the Jim Hammond Human Torch was retconned years ago.
Okay.
That's what, I thought it was, I wasn't sure. They did show that suit in Iron Man, though, didn't they? They showed the original Human Torch. It's like a little Easter egg.
Yeah.
Stug said, Fantastic Four at Woodstock. I mean, it would work. This is another thing. While what's his name is Human Torch as well. Joseph.
Yeah.
What's his name? Quinn. When I say about kind of Johnny Storm being a kind of traditionally good-looking kind of guy, if you look at Joseph's kind of look, he's got that kind of 60s pretty boy, 60s kind of good-looking. Do you know what I mean? Like he looks like a heartthrob from the 60s or from the 70s, as opposed to kind of like a modern ladies' man. So I think he will work because he will be able to play that character in that time. I can see that in that time period, but not in the modern world, if that makes sense. So that's why I think he's a good cast as well. That's what I was kind of getting to earlier on. But yeah. Oh, Beth said, I'm falling asleep. Hopefully not based on the content. Hopefully just because it's like, no, we understand. We do understand a couple of doses in our audience. But yeah, it's not going to be a late one, Bethany. Don't worry. This is just a quick one. This is just a quick one just to talk about these theories, kind of get them out there.
So yeah, that was kind of most of the things I noticed from it. But like I say, they're definitely going with that 60s vibe. I can't wait to see where they go with it next. Maybe we're completely overreading this, and maybe they'll release an image in a couple of months' time at Easter, and it'll be like the 80s or something, and they're just keeping us guessing.
Maybe.
Because like they've put this out on Valentine's Day, which seems random. We might get another art piece saying Happy Easter, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, and it'd be a completely different time era.
You know what? I'm going to lock it in now. I think that this is going to be based in the 60s, and they're revamping, soft rebooting the MCU.
I'm going to lock in that it's Agatha all along.
Okay,
I still love that theory. Because I think that without our input this evening, I don't think the writers at Marvel are smart enough to come up with that concept on their own. So I'm going to point towards the more we're keeping with the current MCU timeline, and they're just going to use some form of Agatha crap to explain it all away. Okay.
Agatha could still be in this, though. That's the nice thing about that, is that both the theories could actually be interlaced, because Agatha's obviously well before the 60s, really. so they could still bring her in. And yeah, I mean, there's still.
I just thought that the Fantastic Four logo, the way they've put it together, it just screamed WandaVision.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Very much so.
The way they're acting in that image seems very. Yeah. Don't look into the camera. It's the 1960s kind of sitcom crap.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Andrew Orr said, whatever happens, I just hope it's a great movie. Fingers crossed. And I am 100% with you on that one.
With you on that, yeah.
Very quickly, though, before we do kind of wrap up, Stug said, any predictions for the Hasbro Pulse fan stream next week? So on the 20th of February, I think it is,
the
Legends team are coming out, and they've said there are going to be some new things revealed. I don't have any theories, to be perfectly honest with
you. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is we have just literally had the Deadpool trailer. They have had images to work from for Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm wondering whether this could be a pipeline kind of a stream where they'll show off a few things that are coming out soon, and then I'm going to go with the whole. You know it's coming. It was the main thing of Super Bowl. Here's a Wolverine and a Deadpool CGI mock-up of what could be for the next wave. You know what I mean? I think they could do that.
I would like to guess if I could have my ideal figures shown, it would be a Deadpool Wolverine, like you said, and Electro and the Lizard from No Way Home.
Yeah, I think they're solid guesses.
I quite hope they give away what that little tease was where they showed us the fire at the end. And when I spoke to Ryan before, he said about it being a kind of quite a good one. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not. The thing is, with so little MCU content, it's hard to kind of speculate. If you really do want to kind of deep dive on it, Rectangular has
he's a go-to guy.
Already called some of the releases. So,
but he's normally 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So he's probably right.
Yeah. So cool. All right then. That's it. That's our theories for what we saw from the Fantastic Four poster. Do let us know if you're watching it on Catch Up. Then obviously Sorrell, they just put in the comments.
Hashtag Catch Up Crew.
Hashtag Catch Up Crew. We have got a couple of other streams lined up. We'll announce them soon. Do check the description of the video for all of the social media stuff. And if you are watching this on Catch Up, then do let us know your theories in the comments as well. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are we a million miles off? Do you think we hit the nail on the head? All of those things. But that's about it. Anything else you want to add?
I'm tired and I'm going to bed.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep it geek.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and of course subscribe. Tune in next week for another live show. Until then, keep it geek. Stay up to date at www.geekweekinreview.co.uk.